Hey folks, David Stewart here. Time for some live writing. Hope y'all are having a good day. Lots of fun stuff going on this week. We don't really need to talk about it, unless you want to, because we need to get to some creative action. Looking at this document, it's got almost 18,000 words in it, which is great. If everything goes according to plan, this will be like an extra full-length book on top of all the other stuff that I do at the end of the week, because I'm only doing this one live. I'm not doing it every day. So, I don't know, if I had a lot of extra time, I'd schedule the stream every day, or if I were doing this full time. If I didn't have a bunch of other projects I had to get ready to go in some other capacity, I could do this every day, and then this book would have been already done in like a month. Yeah, you can write books in a month. Don't let people tell you you have to spend 6 years writing a book and rewriting it 20 times. I had a whole thing about that in the creativity book, which is way over here somewhere. Facing the wrong direction. There it is. A little creativity book. A bunch of little novellas over there that I wrote. Alright. Yeah. Creativity book. So, most of the time when people are like, you have to edit things 100 times, they're not, first of all, they've never been a professional writer, so they don't realize that that's not true, and it's unrealistic, and you'll never have an opportunity to do that in the professional sphere. But they're really expressing their own insecurity. A belief that you're really bad, and that if you're bad, everyone else must be bad too. Right? Everyone else must suck at this thing that they have to rewrite it 6 times. No, right? I think it was Ray Bradbury had like a list of things. He's like, everything, you have to finish everything you write. You have to publish everything you write if possible. Never rewrite except to editorial order. Why never rewrite? Well, it's a waste of time. If it doesn't need to be rewritten, it's a waste of time, right? And I point this out to people, right? This can be a black pill or a white pill, depending on your mental attitude about this. It's like, you have books like The Hunger Games that are hugely popular. You have books like Twilight that are hugely popular. These books are not like beautiful prose. They're not beautifully written books. I think they're good books for what they are. I really intensely dislike the style of Hunger Games, but it got people to read, so that's cool. Excuse me. Lots of people liked it, and that's really what matters. So people are like, Twilight sucks. It's like, well, Twilight sold millions of copies, so clearly being good according to your perspective doesn't really bring you success. And in fact, if you had spent 10 years rewriting Twilight into like a beautiful masterpiece, it probably wouldn't have sold. Because you would have moved outside the target demographic of 12-year-old girls. You know what I mean? So, anyway, people who think, hey, you can't write a book in a month. I've done it. I've written long books in a month. And not using methamphetamine. Yes, you could do it. Walter B. Gibson used to write like several books a month. You just have to have time to do it, and you have to commit to that time, and you have to have enough practice to know how to just get in the word processor and work, or write it on paper if you're going to do it old school. Anyway, let's take a look at our little document here. So we found out. Here, let's find it here. There it is. Just a bit for me. Okay. So we can't deposit Victoria back at her house. This is an important little story algebra thing, right? Is that why is Victoria on the quest? She's on the quest because we literally don't have another option for her, right? We eliminate the option of her being, as a woman, deposited safely at home while the king and his knight go on an epic adventure, right? We want her along for all of that drama. In order to bring her along, we have to have a reason for her to be there. And so the reason is that she actually can't be at home. Now, she's going to have other purposes in the story, but to me, that's a pretty obvious thing, which is like, okay, a gentleman wouldn't bring a lady on a camping trip. It's certainly not one where there was a possibility everybody was going to die. So that's the story algebra that we're working with here. The next little story algebra thing, and sometimes I could do this as a pre-write, is that they don't have any money. So we need to have, as kind of our first adventure, is trying to get money for supplies. They need to get some money for supplies. So Victoria has some money. She knows where some money is, and she's going to get it for them. However, it's not going to be very much money, and the king is going to reveal that it's like, this isn't a lot of money, which means that like Victoria doesn't realize that she's not quite as rich as she thought she was, which will be good, good little point of drama. And then they're gonna go and realize that like the money really doesn't get them very far when they have to kind of buy things in secret and things like that. That'll get us to our first adventure in the mountains, right? So this is another transitionary chapter. We're gonna get our party towards the mountains in the east. And so when we get there, what are we going to do? I have it in the notes. Like, basically, Aethelred is going to get tempted by money, right? Because he doesn't have any money. So that's going to be our setup for this. Anyway, let's go ahead and go. Let me make sure I didn't cover this. Trying to remember the magician's name. I'm gonna give him a cool name. Let me see if I have the notes file open. Yeah, here we go. Let's give him a cool name. Gonna be the court wizard. What's his name gonna be? I don't know. Think of like a cool sounding name. You know, kind of keeping with the royal names, I might name him like Carolex or something. Let's do Derelex, because there's a Carolingian Empire, it's the Carolex Empire, so Derelex. Alright. Yeah, Victoria wouldn't object to that because she doesn't want to be there. So we're going to give that line to Adel. Hope everything's going better for you and your family after the storm last week. It was fine. Our house was fine. You know, it really was much worse west of us. My house was damaged in a much earlier storm, but that was because part of the roof was missing. Appreciate you making that video on Assassin's Creed Shadows. Very frustrating how openly racist Ubisoft is. It's the whole Western gaming industry plus, like this complex of the Western gaming industry plus the Western gaming press. It's very racist against Japan, Japanese people, and the Japanese industry. It has been for like over 10 years. You'll notice that if there's a game that comes out from Japan, it will always have lower reviews from the Western press, even if it's like a genre-defining game like Dark Souls or something. It's pretty much universal, unless it's like a Squaresoft game, and only if the Squaresoft game is doing Western kind of things, which they've been doing lately, more action RPG stuff. But even the ARPG stuff is really Japanese. It's more like Dark Souls, right? Or Demon Souls. Anyway, I digress. The point is that they've always had an extreme bias against Japan. And so, yeah, they'll use any opportunity to, you know, write Japanese people out of their own stories. It's like, yeah, I want to play feudal Japan. It's like, great, you get to play as this African slave that a Jesuit priest took over and has a couple footnotes and a few sources. We don't even know if he was a samurai. It's like, I wanted to play as like a samurai. I'm going to play like Ghost of Tsushima stuff. It's like, no. No, because then you might sympathize with Japanese values. You might think that like feudal Japan's cool. No, we have to have foreigners come in and judge it from the outside as oppressive and evil. It's just how it is. They're claiming that it's indisputable fact that Yosuke impressed and Nobunaga with his size, strength, and wits is an example of meritocratic system implemented under Nobunaga. He was this is an argument in the comment section of the video. Is like, here's the source. It's like this is just about a Jesuit priest bringing an African slave and showing him off to the shogun, and the shogun thought he was cool, right? Like that's it. There's no like this guy. Then he became a vassal of Nobunaga. It's like no, that's no. All that stuff comes later, and you find like all the records are pretty much from like foreigners, and they're like legendary. It's like the legend of Yasuke. Okay, that's cool. I'll put it in the realm of possibility, but the reason like more Japanese people in general are critical of that is this is just a fantasy element. There's no like, you'd think that there would be some historical records of a foreigner doing this. It's like, nah. Most you can get from the sources is that like a Jesuit priest displayed his African slave for the shogun. Woo. You know, maybe he was a good specimen. You know, meritocratic system implemented by Nobunaga. Please. I don't know. People don't like to read books. Yeah, Jesuits did tend to embellish, or they bring special emphasis to them meeting the shogun because it was a big event, right? They were missionaries. They founded colleges, right? They did a lot of writing. There's a lot of records, but the internal records are gonna like point more towards what the people there at the time thought was important, right? If you take a trip to Japan, it's very important, right? You go see the shogun, it's like a big event in your life. For Nobunaga, well, Nobunaga wasn't shogun. Sorry, Nobunaga wasn't shogun, but like, he was the what was the Taiko? I'm trying to remember what title he took. It wasn't Kanrei. That's like vice shogun. I think it was Taiko. It wasn't shogun. So anyway, Nobunaga, you go see the Taiko. You go see like the warlord of Japan. It's a big deal for you. For Nobunaga, it was Wednesday. Do you know what I mean? These barbarians want to show you their African slave. Cool. Well, let's put him through. Let's see what he does. You know, that was entertaining. Anyway, let's get back to invading Korea or whatever we're doing. I don't think it was Nobunaga invaded Korea. I need to go review all my Warring State stuff. I'm very tired. Nobunaga was never shogun, though. He never took that title. Maybe he could have. Jesuit, yeah. So yeah, I agree with you. All right, we need some more music. That was a new track. I'll link it in the chat. Yeah, the stipend was for entertaining them, maybe. We don't know. We don't know. Maybe he bought the slave. We don't know. All right. That's my point. It's like the arguments I've seen for it, because I'm not like a Warring States period expert. Like most of my research was for Muromachi period. I wanted to go kind of before that. Before everybody puts things in Warring States because it's very exciting, right? It's like big civil wars and stuff. It's fun. But yeah, we don't really know. It's okay. We can entertain it as like a fun concept, as like a fun idea, but like why? Why do that instead of a normal experience? I don't know. Well, I know why. You plan on doing any more reviews of Malazan? I could. I haven't done any Malazan Book of the Fallen reviews. I could do some. Could talk about him. Positive reviews get no views, though. It's kind of a tough situation. If I don't hate something, no one will watch the review of it. Which, I don't know. That says something about our world. I still do positive reviews of lots of books, but no one watches them. So, or same thing if I write it. More people will read a written positive review. A lot more people are willing to read a written positive review, but for whatever reason with YouTube, if it's not a negative review, no one's going to see it. So I still do them, but it's more like because I feel compelled to point out positive things rather than just be negative all the time. You know, it's like I want to talk about the things that I really like. If you want a big overview of Malazan Book of the Fallen, there's so much going on. My main criticism against it is that it's a lot of them feel like just way better executed Robert Jordan middle Wheel of Time books where there's like 30 different plots going on and none of them, you know, they should have all been separate little books. It should have been more like Discworld, with lots of little intersecting stories rather than where you get one book and there'd be like 3 or 4 different characters going on different, like, you know, there's one and it's like it's Karsa Orlong, right? And he's half the book, and the other half of the book is all real stuff happening to One Arm's Host. There should have been 2 books. There should have been the Karsa Orlong book, Karsa Orlong's Adventure, and then the rest of Memories of Ice. I think it was Memories of Ice that they did that in. I could be wrong. Memories of Ice. I think that's the one. I'm not sure though now that I think about it. Are there any authors today besides yourself, of course, that you can recommend? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out there. You know, I like Brandon Sanderson's stuff. I like Steven Erickson's stuff. I like a lot of modern fantasy. But I wish people would pay more attention to older stuff. That's mine. You know, that's all. There's a little ad. All right. Let's get back to the writing portion. I'd have to think about it. Like, what have I read recently from modern authors that I thought was good? A lot of times I can't get through it. You know, I'll go buy a book, and I get about 50 pages in. I'm like, this just sucks. It's boring, or the premise is really stupid, or it's really like ham-fistedly liberal, and I just won't finish it. In which case, like, why would I talk about it? I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on the magic in Malazan? I like it. It's a well thought out system, kind of derived from the planes of the gods. It's a fun idea, I think. Yeah. Little less systematized than like D&D or Brandon Sanderson, and that's good. It's more pointing towards sorcery of the divine, which I like. There's a lot of little things that I'm just like, don't care for this or that. A lot of it's enjoyable to read at the time because you're uncovering kind of secrets, and then when you take a step back, you're like, a lot of that was just unnecessary. We just didn't need to read that. It didn't have anything to do with the plot. That could have been a different story somewhere. Lots of fun ideas, you know. Erickson has this idea about like people ascending to be gods, which is a fun idea, I think. Though he never really gets about like how that happens. People just kind of say it happens. So they have it through like some kind of death, like Hercules. Kind of interesting. All right. toward the river. How would you recommend introducing story writing to children, or when to start? Start as soon as they're writing. My son wrote a whole... I did it as like an exercise in kindergarten. Right? He wrote like a whole book and he has it on his shelf. So he'd draw a picture and then write a sentence about what was happening in the story. And we just did that every day, and then he had a book, right? So my son wrote his first book I think he started it at 5 and he finished it when he was 6. Right? It's really simple, and he's still learning to handwrite stuff, but it's a way for him to practice handwriting and coming up with sentences and things like that. So yeah, you could start that at 5, or whenever they're able to pick up a pencil. It doesn't have to be long; it could be really short, easy things. Do you have any thoughts on elves and how to innovate on the idea of them? You can read my books. Yeah. Well, I mean, what is an elf? It just depends on how you're approaching it. Like, is it an otherworldly thing? Is it... For my books, it's basically a race from the past. They're humans. But they're more like the Golden Age man is the elf, and then the Iron Age man is the current man, and the Silver man has kind of disappeared, has turned into the Iron Age man. But there's still like threads of that in there. That's old Greek stuff, so that's in my books. We got about 10 more minutes. So the modern men are the impure elves or something. Yeah, it's more like... so you have this older Greek myth about sort of the descent of man and the fall of man. A lot of cultures have a story about the fall of man, what the fall of man is. So I have like a somewhat more complicated like mythology of that in my books. And that in the beginning of time, people were very close to God and therefore had powers like unto God. And the gods were just, like angels. They were creations of that original God who were especially powerful. But over time, because of bad things the gods did, because of bad things that people did, they lost, like what, if you've ever heard, the image and likeness of God. You lose the likeness of God, but you retain the image. So people and elves might physically look somewhat similar, although elves look prettier, right? Because they're still like more refined. As you move away from that, you lose your power. So you start to lose your magic, in a sense. You lose your ability to control the world in the way that you think. You lose the magic of creation. But elves suffer their own issues because since they're less fallen than people, but they're still fallen. So as they get older, the world becomes a much bigger burden because the world is full of sin, to the point where they want to die, right? So like immortality is kind of a curse. So they have what they call the long sleep. They'll basically just lay down and die out of despair. And that's kind of their curse. So yeah, that it's people kind of falling down. If you read The Bright Children, there's the beginning of that mythology. Most people haven't read that because it's on Kindle Vela, so I will make it available as like a real book for people. Either I'll make it like free, or I don't know what I'll do with it. Anyway, it's a good book, so people would enjoy it. Great adventure book. But you have that there. There's like the people who can actually command magic. There's sort of dim people. Can't really do magic very good. And then there's people who are done. They like they're completely fallen. Completely cursed to be mundane. Do you have any favorite magic and fantasy books? I like Jack Vance. Yeah, I like Jack Vance. I like I like the magic in the Stormlight Archive. It's just the whole system doesn't quite come together for me. But I like Vancian magic. I like magic that's more sorcerous. It needs to be kind of otherworldly, kind of fey, untouchable. It's more interesting to me. All right, let me finish this up. Maybe I'll do another one tomorrow to kind of get more stuff out. Are you familiar with Jacques Vallée's take on elves? No. article. I never get, like... I never get, like... I never get real calls anymore. Alright, it's about time for me to hang it up. Let me finish this scene. It's an hour. Yeah, that's about it for today. 1,500 words. Or about 1,400 words. Let's check it. 1,400 words. 13.99. I gotta write another 100 real quick and make it 1,500 words. That's what Stephen King says to write every day. So, you just do this every day for an hour. You'll have a book eventually. You know. So a lot of stuff with UFOs, I'll just say this, like, they do seem more supernatural to me than aliens, right? Like more demonic, not necessarily elves, right? It's an interesting thing to think about, though. This is really the end of the scene, so we're... Okay. This book deals not just with elves and fairies, but night hags, demons, etc. I think it's all more or less the same phenomenon. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I think it's a very interesting idea to think about. You know, because a lot of the stuff that we think about with aliens, it's like, surely somebody would have had some physical evidence at some point. Instead, it's experiential evidence, which is not non-evidence. So anecdotes are not non-evidence, they're just stories, right? Somebody has an experience that's real to them. They can communicate that experience, but we don't know what, we don't have like a physical record of what that was. We don't have like a piece of an alien or a spaceship, okay? So I think the focus on aliens is really, you know, a factor of our mindset in the current year or in the modern era thinking about extraterrestrial life following the space race. Chances are people had these experiences in 1930 and never thought they were aliens, but thought they were like Cthulhu monsters or demons or something, right? You know, that's a theme in Lovecraft, or like these kinds of experiences, like Dreams of the Witch House. So yeah, I totally see that. It's a little bit of our bias towards our current mentality that people think, well, this is aliens, because they're thinking about aliens now, because they can conceive of what an alien is within some science fiction framework in the modern era, whereas a medieval person wouldn't think that. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of a bias towards the modern, bias towards the contemporary, which we do with lots of things, right? There's always a lot of biases towards the contemporary with a lot of stuff we do. For instance, simulation theory. Are we part of a giant simulation? It's like you're just discovering baby's first Gnosticism. Like the ancients considered this thousands of years ago, but they didn't have computers, so they didn't have... People are just inserting Gnostic beliefs into a framework where there's computers exist. Not really thinking about it deeper. And not really thinking that like a simulation is exactly the same thing as like a demiurge. Do you know what I mean? Anyway. One of the first recorded sightings of a gray was a military man who woke up and saw it beside his bed. He called it a goblin. Yes, great example. Artemis got a great example. You know, so we tend to put things in our modern frame, right? It's a simulation. We're in a computer simulation rather than the universe is created. And so it's interesting because Scott Adams actually communicated sort of one of the underpinnings of my world. He's like, it's like we're in a simulation and the past is made at need. When somebody needs something to exist in the past, then it's written, and the past doesn't actually exist. You know, there's elements of that in some of my work, right? It's a fun idea. It's a fun idea to think about, but it's no different than what the ancients conceived of as like, is the world real? To what degree is it real? To what degree does our cosmology reflect reality? Is our cosmology an artificial construct and there's some other reality beyond it that's creating it? Well, the other reality you could describe as God. If you're going the Gnostic route, then there's some other real truth, and what we see around us is false somehow, like we're imprisoned in a body. Tends to be what Gnostics end up concluding, that like this is not real. Whereas the Christian tradition is this is real and it was created by God. You know. So I think it's a really interesting thing to think about. Yeah. So, yeah, cool thing to think about. All right. That's going to be it for today. I got to go try to buy a mattress because my mattress got roof water on it. So I've been sleeping on a gross ruined mattress for weeks. Finally got a check to buy a new one, so we're gonna go buy a new mattress, I think, and then I'm gonna, I don't know, do something else. So anyway, have a great one, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Check it out for the stream. Hope you have a good weekend. Thank you, Rumble. Thank you, Hardwick, for suggesting him. I'll check out Valier, if I'm pronouncing his name right or not. I think it's a really interesting idea to explore. Because every age has, like, aliens to me are kind of like a folklore, a modern folklore. It's like, what do we see the connections with in the past with, like, changelings or, like, visits from others or fae beings or demons, right? It's like when people are like, hey, this person's schizophrenic. I remember this anecdote from a priest where he was going into a mental hospital to deliver communion to people who were mentally ill. And so he'd have the host, like, in his pocket. And the lunatics would go crazy and assault him and try to attack him and tear his clothes off. And after he gave communion to the prisoners, walking out, they were completely calm. They weren't screaming. They were completely calm when he was walking out. whereas they were trying to attack him when he had the communion, when he had the blessed communion wafers in his pocket. He had the host, he had the body of Christ. So we read things in the New Testament about casting out demons, and we're like, oh, maybe this was some kind of layer of madness. Maybe it's that we don't understand what madness is. We have a limited we're thinking of madness in entirely a material plane. It's like, this is a material, it's something in our brain, it's something with our neurons broken, rather than the possibility of an external thing pushing in, a demonic influence, right? It's interesting to think about. I think it's really interesting to think about, because one of the things that we actually don't know, I'm using the royal we, I guess, it's not proper, but maybe I should say psychologists or psychiatrists, is that we don't really know what causes schizophrenia. You hear things about like a chemical imbalance in the brain, but there's not any kind of deep knowledge about what those chemical imbalances might be. And once you know what the chemical imbalance is, like for example, Parkinson's, it stops being a psychological or psychiatric issue and becomes a neurological one. It goes into the harder realm of neurology versus the soft realm of psychiatry. So you give people psychiatric medication hoping it changes their symptoms and their feelings and their experiences so that they can function better. But the mechanisms of how those things are altering the brain in a way that facilitates that is actually not very well known. Belief in keeping serotonin levels high to combat depression. The belief that like serotonin has some effect with depression may actually be just kind of bunk. There may not be any real connection there, that we're seeing things on secondary. We're seeing second order effects and we're not really understanding what's going on. So, like the Victorian craze with the supernatural. There's crazes with supernatural in every period we have them too. Yeah, the Victorians they were ghosts, right? They liked ghosts. Now we like aliens, but in the past it might have been goblins or bugbears or something. Witches, different kinds of obsessions with the supernatural. There were whole like Malus Maleficarum, like the Hammer of the Witches, like witch hunting manuals for finding people using bad magic, because people just believed in magic in the medieval period. Right? Kind of interesting. It's always interesting to explore that, because we assume that like at being modern we're like the apex of understanding these things, when really we're just assuming we might be. But we're assuming we understand them. The medieval man was also assuming he understood them. Maybe we don't understand them. Maybe we're just a little bit further on the knowledge thing, or we're fitting difficult to explain things into a modern framework full of things that we understand, like technology. Like these are alien attacks and the aliens are coming to us with technology, right? We're in a computer simulated technology thing, right? Rather than looking at it as a supernatural existence. It's interesting to think about. Yeah. All right. Take it easy, guys. I'll see you all next time. Have a great day. This will be up on the Substack. I might add to it tomorrow to finish off the chapter, and then that'll be up on the Substack. So, and on the Patreon, Ko-Fi. So you get all that stuff for free, and you get a free book every month. This month's free book is actually a book that isn't even out yet. It's the first part of King Leper. So we'll have the other stuff. We'll also get free on that as well, even before I publish it or crowdfund or do any of that kind of stuff. So you get this stuff way ahead of time, and that's an extra bonus for anybody that's a patron now. And if you can't get a hold of that book, let me know. I'm still figuring out how to distribute it to everybody, so things will be kind of weird. Trying to figure out like a good way to give it to people that isn't gonna just be publishing it on the internet, I guess. So have a good one, and I'll see you all next time.